Hi there, everyone. It's Hillary Topper here from We Are Triathletes, and we are here today with Tim Delss, who is with CB MultiSport, and he's going to tell us all about cycling and getting us stronger on the bike, even during off season. So I'm really excited to have him. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Hillary.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, how did you get involved with triathlons anyway?
So I've been in team sports my whole life, starting at age 5, soccer, baseball, football, And when I got to high school, my knees had gotten so bad that I couldn't run anymore. So I took up cycling as a form of exercise and stress relief. Because I couldn't run, I couldn't do the things I used to do. And then I just got to the point where I really fell in love with cycling, and I started riding more and more and more. And then I found a couple local bike shops that did weekly rides that I could jump on with, and they kicked my butt up and down the road for months on end and made fun of me because when it got cold, I wore a sweatshirt, because I didn't have all the right gear or anything like that. And after riding with them for a while, I started to move up through the group, and I started to get more comfortable on the bike. And then eventually I got my knee fixed and could go back to running again, and went right up through marathon in a few years because I really fell back in love with running, and then wanted to find a new challenge that combined the two things that I really enjoyed. So I landed in triathlon 8 years ago.
Wow. And so tell us about, so how did you get into the coaching business? So now you're with a CB MultiSport, and how did that come about?
So when I got into triathlon, I was a competitive runner. I was running competitively after I had gotten back to it, and was not an elite level runner, but, at the local races, I did fairly well and stuff like that. And so when I got into triathlon, I needed help learning how to swim, learning how to race triathlon. And so a couple people in my triathlon club that I joined took me under their wing and showed me the ropes and showed me around and do this, don't do this. And in return, I was providing support on running, as far as training and, try this. We were trading back and forth. And I found that I really enjoyed the aspect of teaching and helping someone else succeed, more so than myself. In the years since, I get way more worked up and emotional when my athletes do well than when I do well. Like you see somebody else get there, and it's a feeling that you can't experience for yourself.
Oh, totally. I totally hear that.
That.
I totally get that. So, all right. So let's talk about the bike. Okay. So we're going into off season right now. I mean, there's still a couple of big events coming up, but as we go into off season, is there a way to get stronger on the bike?
Sure. There's two ways to get stronger on the bike, really, and only one of them is really accessible in the off season, and that's strength training. Most triathletes don't lift weights very often because you're already training for 3 other sports, plus you have work, plus you have your life, your kids, your family, that kind of stuff. So whenever you drop something, it's always going to be strength training. In the winter time, what I do with my athletes is I drop their volume down for the 3 sports that they're doing, which of course gives them more time. And I put a focus on getting stronger, as in going to the gym and working on flexibility, movement, the things that help prevent injury. So from a strength training standpoint, cycling comes down to your core, because if you need a strong core and a steady core in order for everything else to work right, And then it's primarily your hamstrings, your quad muscles, your glutes. You know, it's all lower, mostly lower body, and then the core. So workouts such as squats, which are dynamic, they use some multiple planes. It uses your core, uses a whole lot of different things. Single leg deadlifts, if you can't do them, regular deadlifts are fine, you know, but a single leg deadlift really isolates everything. And then workouts like heel raises, where you're elevating your heels up, whether you're on a platform. I prefer a platform where you can drop your heels down below what is normal and then back up, because it also helps stretch. But all of those workouts, or those actual exercises and movements, will work all the major muscles in your legs, and it'll also work the stabilizers, the things in the ankles, the things in the hips, the things in the knees, because you want everything to be stable and steady, and you want your legs to be working in a line like this. You don't want, you know, a knee out here. You don't want a knee diving in here. So the more you can work those complex movements, the more bang for your buck you're going to get, you know, because you're already time crunched anyway.
All right, so that's off season, but what about on season? So, I mean, is it possible really to get stronger on the bike during the season?
It absolutely is. Now, strength training during the season is a totally different ball game, right? You're no longer trying to lift weight, build a bunch of muscle, do things like that. So for my athletes, I take out the lifting aspect, and they go to a body weight routine that's much more dynamic, and it's just about keeping everything stabilized and things like that. And then for strength on the bike during the season, you do the easiest way to get faster, and it's also the hardest from a time standpoint, is to ride your bike more. Okay? There's a reason that professionals ride 300 to 400 miles a week. Most people can't do that. You know, you can get, depending on what you're training for, you can get anywhere from 75 to, if you're bike crazy like me, 200, 250 miles, but I don't have kids to deal with, right? So even if it's just more days on the bike and not necessarily more time, that's great. And you know, everybody knows that your weekends are for your long workouts, you know, because that's when you have the most time. But when you're working out during the week, it shouldn't be just riding your bike. There should be a focus to each time you're on the bike. It may not be to go hard, but every time you get on your bike, there should be a reason why. So if you have a focused workout during the week where you're doing, one of the ones I love to go to is 3 by 20 minutes of an interval that's going to be at, for me, would be like my Olympic distance pace. So 24, 25 miles an hour, somewhere in that ballpark for 20 minutes. And then there's a 5-minute recovery, right? Catch your breath, get your heart rate down, then you go right back into it. So the whole workout's less than 90 minutes long, but an hour of it is good, useful riding that on race day, your body will remember. So you just want to make sure you have a purpose when you're on your bike.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. You know I do like 2 by 20. I can't even imagine doing 3 by 20. It's hard. It's hard doing 2 by 20.
Yeah.
So in terms of strategies, let's talk a little bit about strategies. So, you know, you were telling me earlier that where you live, it's mostly hills. Where I live, there's no hills. I mean,
Right.
There's nothing. It's completely flat. We're right here on the beach. I mean, you know, so talk to us a little bit about strategies for hill climbing.
Sure. So hill climbing, obviously power is a premium when you're going uphill, right? Because you're fighting gravity. Now, everybody only has so much power. And the more you ride, obviously, the more power you can get. But for all intents and purposes, whether you can put out 1,000 watts or more like I can, or whether you can only put out 200 watts, the key is to use it effectively, right? So there's a couple things you can do when you ride, when you climb, to make life easier for you. the first thing to do is usually when you ride a bike, if this is your saddle, right, your butt, you're usually sitting on the middle, the middle to the front of the saddle, okay? And that puts you over top of your crank. It's the most efficient way to keep your pedals turning and things like that. It's easier on the body. Now, when you climb on a hill and your bike angle changes, your actual position to the bike changes as well, okay? Because you don't move up like this because your front wheel went up. You end up getting closer to your bike. So what you can do, the biggest thing to do is to slide back on your saddle. Instead of being here, if you slide your butt back towards the edge of your saddle, it lengthens your legs out, but it makes you recruit your glutes and your hamstrings, which are the two biggest sets of muscles in your lower body. So if you're pushing all that weight because you have to carry yourself uphill, you want to use the biggest muscles you can, no matter how small you are or big you are. So that helps to engage the biggest muscles. You can't climb on your quads alone. The people that try it, you see them, they hit a hill and they kind of grip down on the handlebars and they just go. And 5 minutes later, they're crawling on the side of the road because they're blowing out these muscles that aren't built for that kind of work.
That's me.
It used to be me when I first started, but the first race I signed up for in triathlon was Savage Man, which I was telling you about before, which has 7,000 feet of climbing over 56 miles. And one of the people who took me under their wing in the sport was like, you need to learn how to climb. So that's the biggest thing. The second thing to do is usually when your foot is on if this is your pedal and this is your foot, your heel is usually up a little bit, right? It goes around and it flattens out at the bottom and then it comes back up to the top, okay? Well, that doesn't help as far as putting down power if you move back on your saddle. So if you drop your heel at the bottom of your stroke to below your pedal, I tell people to think about it if you were scraping mud off the bottom of your shoe. So your heel actually gets below your pedal, then it helps to engage those bigger muscles that we were talking about. So those two kind of go together. You slide back and then you just lower your heel to just below level. You'll feel it. You can't take it all the way down because you'll stretch your legs out too far, but just dropping it a little bit makes a huge difference.
Wow, that's great. What a great suggestion. Now, let's talk, there's been this big struggle, I think, in our community about cadence versus power. Some people believe that you should go 90, RPMs. Others say it doesn't really matter, just focus on power. What do you think?
So I'm not a very small guy as a triathlete and a cyclist. I mean, I'm 5'8" and I'm 175 pounds, right? I'm not 150 pounds. I'm wide. I have big legs, things like that. So I ride with a lot of power. If you asked me to, I could put out almost 2,000 watts on a trainer if you said, hey, can you do that, right? Right. But that said, you still need to ride a high enough cadence for it to be efficient, right? Professional cyclists, if you watch them, they tend to ride pretty high cadences, usually around 100. And that's good for them from the standpoint of it allows them to get on their bike day after day after day after day and keep racing. Personally, I tend to fall between 85 and 95, and it is a little bit of a personal preference. I do reference 90 RPM as a starting point. And the reason I do that is from an efficiency standpoint, 90 RPM is about the same cadence that you run at. So it makes the transition of going from bike to run a lot easier. And it also, the lower your cadence gets, the more you're putting constant pressure on your muscles. So you may be able to have, like if I ran 80 RPM or 75, I could put down a faster bike split in a time trial. There's no doubt. It's all power. I could put it down. But I wouldn't be able to run. There's no chance I could run afterwards. So it's it's finding that delicate balance. Um, as far as power goes, if you have a power meter, power's great. Besides being able to see that you're getting better on the bike, the best part of power in triathlon is it keeps you from overdoing it on the bike. Most people ride about 10 to 15% harder than they should. And they'll say, you'll talk to them at the next get together and they'll say, man, I had a great bike split or a great swim or whatever, and I fell apart at mile 4 of my run of my 10K.
Yep.
It's not because they're not good runners. It's because they're biking a little too hard. If you take a half Ironman, which is my favorite distance to race at, for example, and take 10% off of the effort that I'm putting in, right, it's going to cost me maybe 3 minutes on the bike to go 10% slower. But on the run, if I were to go 10% or 10% harder, it could cost me 15 minutes. So you always want to err on the side of being able to run. If you're doing a sprint, then you're going as fast as you can, as fast as you can handle the whole time. But the longer the race gets, the more you have to dial the bike back. Otherwise, those couple minutes you saved are going to be useless when you're walking the last 5 miles of your half marathon. So power is great for keeping you in line from that standpoint. That's what I use it for. I use it to keep me in line, lets me know I'm not getting too crazy. If there's an uphill, it keeps me pushing on the downhills, because the rule of cycling that no matter how hilly your course is, you want to think about trying to flatten it from an effort standpoint. So when you're going uphill, you don't want to over push, because if you think about it as a pack of matches, each time you go hard, you're burning a match. You only have so many matches in your pack. So if you can dial that down on the uphill, you don't burn a match. And then when you get over the hill, you can accelerate a little more and you can just kind of flatten it out. And power's great from that standpoint.
So, in terms of power, if you do have a power meter, which, I mean, I don't know if you recommend, or it sounds like you do recommend.
I love a power meter, but as a coach, I tell my athletes, I'm never going to tell you to go buy something, because some people can. I mean, some people don't want to spend $800 to $2,000 on a power meter, or they can, or they don't want to, or whatever. So if you have one, it's a great tool. If you don't have one and you have the money that you want to burn, I would tell you to go buy that after you bought a set of wheels, right? Because wheels are the best benefit. But if you have one, it's a great tool.
Oh, so let's talk about that. So you're saying that wheels are the best benefit. So what do you, so talk a little bit about that. Like what, if you buy a tri-bike right off the rack, right? You're saying that the best investment would be to get a pair of racing wheels that will make you go faster?
So there's a mindset in the sport that you buy speed, right? The people that have $15,000 bikes should be faster. Outside of the pros, they're usually not. The people that have $15,000 bikes are usually not faster. So the key to cycling is the engine. It's all about you. Now, I would tell people, whether it's with me or any coach, if you're going to spend money, if you say, I got a $1,500 budget for this year and I want to buy an upgrade, I'm going to tell you to get a coach, because they'll make the most out of the motor, no matter who it is. If they're a competent, experienced coach, they will make you faster than a set of wheels ever will. And things like wheels get faster. You get more benefit out of wheels. You get more benefit out of wheels than you will get, the faster you go. So somebody made a chat, asked a comment about a helmet versus wheels. A helmet is beneficial in that they're usually relatively inexpensive. Wheels will make you faster than a helmet. Wheels cost $2,000 and a helmet costs $200. So in terms of bang for a buck, it's going to be a helmet. But in terms of overall time, it's going to be wheels. once you've gone, if you have a coach or if you're already a decent cyclist or whatever, and you really want to buy goodies and, and you have a decent budget, yeah, wheels on a flat course for, say, like an Ironman, they'll save you about 12 to 15 minutes on the bike.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what do you recommend a specific wheel to look at?
So there's, people love Zip wheels. Zip is the big thing in the sport, right? And they make a decent wheel. I think they're way overpriced. This is $3,000 for a decent set of Zip wheels, and that's absurd to me. But it really depends on what your budget is. There's a lot of decent wheel manufacturers that are considered mid-range. Their wheels are $1,000 to $1,500. Reynolds makes a good set of wheels for under $2,000. I really like Envy wheels, but I can't afford Envy wheels, so I don't ride them. They make nice wheels. There's a brand that operates out of Maryland, where I live, called November Wheels, you can get a good solid set of deep carbon wheels for like $1,100. So there are manufacturers out there. Flow, FLO, brand called Flow, they make a great wheel that's not overpriced. So go to a bike shop, if you have a bigger bike shop in your area, and ride a few of them, because they all feel different. They feel a little different. They all sound a little different, and it depends on what your price point is. I wouldn't advocate spending $5,000 on a set of wheels, though. It's not worth it.
And then on that same level, what about the helmet? So, does it make sense to get a time trial helmet? Does it make sense to get a MIPS helmet? What's the difference between all of these helmets anyway?
So time trial helmets have evolved a lot since I got in the sport. When I got in the sport, they were really long, they had a big fin on the back, right? And they looked goofy, right? And you saw somebody have one and you thought, oh my God, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So they've changed. If you notice them now, they're getting smaller. They're getting shorter. Like Rudy is the big helmet manufacturer. My road helmet is a Rudy, and I love it. It's the most comfortable thing on earth, and they're very reasonably priced. But their fins now they're small. They're 6 inches long, and they kind of curve down instead of straight out. And the reason why is they're finding that most of the turbulence is at the back of the neck. So you don't need this thing that goes halfway down your back. You just need to isolate that area. It's also the reason that you've seen the expansion of what are called aero road helmets. No fin. It comes kind of low in the back, and they're rounded on the back. So it helps with the air distribution, but it's not, big. That's actually what I race on. It's called a Giro Air Attack. It's 3 years old, I guess, at this point. But that is great. It's got plenty of vents, where traditional time trial helmets are very hot because they're not vented. Mm-hmm. They've learned how to make venting fast now. So if you're only buying one helmet, I would suggest an Aero Road helmet, because it's going to be comfortable enough to wear it every day, but it's going to have the benefits. It's a good in between. But for comfort, you can't beat a Rudy helmet. They're the most comfortable thing that I've ever put on my head. I wish my race helmet was a Rudy, but it's not at this time. My next one will be, though.
Okay, we have a question. And actually, I'm going to let you read this. I'm going to unmute you. Hi.
I'll let you read that, Tim.
Okay. Oh.
So
all right.
what?
Go ahead.
Complicated in that I keep getting this feedback every time I've looked into purchasing wheels, because that's the last thing on my list. I mean, I have power at home, so I train on a copy trainer and I can get my power, and I've got a Cadence monitor, so I do that all at home. For my outdoor rides, I don't usually use power as much as Cadence, so we just figured I don't really need a power meter for how tiny I am. So I don't usually ever get higher than 113 pounds. That's my top weight. And my low weight when I race is like 109. So they keep saying that for the actual trade-off of purchasing wheels which are heavier, and for how aero I am, I don't get that much cost savings out of it. They don't think I will. And then I'm gonna have to pull those extra weight up hills because every race that I pick seems to be hilly. Mont-Tremblant was my first one, and that's not hilly. And I love that because the downhills, it's like screaming fast. But uphill, I saw people struggling with their nice fancy race wheels that day because the weather was so bad. We had side winds. So that was a day I was very grateful that I just had standard wheels. I don't feel like I lost any more time. But now I'm looking at Ironman Canada, and traditionally they have good weather, except for in 2015 when the weather tanked. But it's usually warmer and it's a long climb out. So I'm trying to, reassess and get as many opinions as I can about whether or not it's worth the investment. That is a lot of money.
Yes, it absolutely is. And for someone that's at max 112 pounds, I would tell you to stay away from a deep wheel. Like a Zip 808, which is 80 millimeters deep, something like that. And the reason why is because if the winds pick up, it's going to blow you around. Right? I mean, seriously, like I ride a 404 on the front and a disc wheel on the back. And again, I'm a heavier guy. And I've had winds blow me 5-6 feet across the road. Now, I'm really comfortable on a bike, so it doesn't bother me much, but it is there. With that said, unless you're doing something really hilly, and I'm talking, Mont-Tremblant was less than 6,000 feet of climbing over the whole bike course, right? It was like 5,500. It's pretty close to like Lake Placid. I would run race wheels at Lake Placid. I'd run race wheels at Mont-Tremblant. But I would suggest a mid-grade wheel for you, something like I'm going to use Zip because they have the most expansive one. But like the Zip 303 is 30 millimeters deep. So it's, what does that come out to? 2.5 inches, something like that. It's not a super deep wheel, but so you're not getting a ton of weight out of it, but it's made in the same type of molds as all their deeper wheels with the dimpled sidewall, and the shape of the rim is the same as the deeper ones, right? So you get the benefits of the more aero wheels. It's just a milder version, and you won't be sacrificing a ton of weight. I mean, a disc is heavy. My disc is 1,400 grams, which is the same weight as a lot of sets of wheels. Okay, a Zip set of 303s is about 1,400 grams for the whole set. So you're getting a much less weight than running a really deep wheel like you see. They're easier to spin up the shallower they are. So it's less of a pain when you're climbing, right? Because it's easier to keep the momentum going. And it wouldn't push you around very much. The other option to consider if you want something a little deeper, and again, I'm using Zip, would be a 303 on the front and a 404 on the back. And the reason I would say that is because in terms of getting blown around,
right,
it's the front wheel is what matters, because that's where you're controlling, and it's where you have the least amount of weight. All your weight's over the rear. You're never going to get blown around on the back of the bike. It's always going to be the front. Mm-hmm. So you could go to a shallower front and then a milder rear and get something that you can still handle. But if you like to do hilly courses like Mont-Tremblant, and things.
My coach likes me to do hilly courses so far. And I picked this one specifically because of the hill profile, because I am so tiny. Like you said, you try to equalize it by choosing something hilly so you can make up time. Because I am so tiny, I just don't have a chance unless I pick something that's not flat.
Right, you're right. You don't have a ton of power to put behind you.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's
I would really.
One is on the downhill.
I would really look at something around 30 to 33 millimeters deep. It'll give you a little bit of an aero profile, so you will get a benefit on a flatter area. but it won't penalize you a ton. There is still a benefit to it for you. It's just you can't go crazy like bigger guys like I can and run and any wheel combination you want, because it'll hamper you.
One last question with that, and then I do want to not monopolize this time anymore. I don't laugh.
Nope, not yet.
I have 650C wheels because I
So,
have a tiny bike. So it's a Cervelo P2 that I specifically got because I'm so short in the torso. I don't really fit the new 48 centimeter frame of Cervelo. We tried and they said, oh, you're going to have to cut the center bar. Well, if you do that, you lose the warranty on it. Like, why do that? So I got a 650 and I know that cuts my efficiency down. What does that do to my ability to find wheels? Because I've had a really hard time.
Yeah, so riding 650s over 700s does not, I wouldn't say it cuts your efficiency down.
Well,
No, I know. I'm saying from your standpoint, I don't think that that's hurting you. At your size, you're riding the right bike. So don't ever look at it that way. If you were on 700s, the wheels may roll a touch faster, but it would be a whole lot harder for you to handle your bike. So you're on the right type of bike at 5'3", and we'll call it 110 pounds. Yes, 650s are a limited market versus 700 because 90% of the bikes on the market are running 700. That said, the big manufacturers, Zip, Reynolds, Flow, Envy, they all make 650 options. Even if they're not necessarily on their website, they make them. So, and they usually have them, they'll have a handful of them on site at big races too. Like Ironman, their support guys, they do carry 650s on their support vehicles also. And tubes for 650s.
I was told for long-term blah, but they had no support for me. So they said,
Really?
you're on your own this one. I'm like, great. Terrible. So I carried everything with me.
Well, it's always better to err that way if possible, like, because you don't ever want your race to fall into someone else's hands.
Right.
But like my last race, I flatted 3 times and a half. So eventually it got to the point where it just couldn't be in my hands anymore, right? And that does happen. But for long course racing, I would carry 2 tubes anyway. And if I was doing an Ironman, I would carry enough to change 2, and I would have enough to change 2 more in special needs.
Yep, that's what
I did. If I had flats when I hit special needs, I could regather what I might need for the second half. But yeah, the big manufacturers do have a 650. You may have to ask, but they do have it.
Okay. I will look into that. Thank you.
No problem.
So I have one last question. You were talking a little bit before we started about Eagle Man and that it's a flat as a pancake type of a race, and so is Ironman Maryland. And a lot of people opt for these flat races. But with these flat races come a lot of wind.
Yes.
How can you fly, through these windy type of courses?
So there's 2 things. The easiest way to be fast in windy conditions is to have a good bike fit. Okay, if you have a bike that's set up for you, then you're going to be as comfortable as you can be, and that makes a bigger difference than anything you. Beyond that, what you will see a lot in races like Eagle Man and Ironman Maryland, where there's less than 100 feet of elevation gain, is when the winds pick up, like even me, you bigger, fairly powerful guy, when the winds pick up, when it first happens, people fly by me because they are focusing on their speed and they're no longer focusing on their effort. So if we're at mile 20, you can have it. Seriously, go right ahead, because at mile 40, when you look like you're about to die, I'm going to go by you and look exactly the same as when you saw me at mile 20. So when it's really windy, if you're racing a looped course, when the winds are at your back or they're down, take advantage of it, right? Your pace is going to go up. You want to follow your effort, whether it's by power or by heart rate, whatever it is that you're following, you want to keep that in line, and that'll allow you to take advantage of the faster sections. And when you get into the wind, don't be afraid to slow down. People feel like they need to try to keep their average up. I don't care what your average is. If you're one of my athletes, I don't care what your average is in the wind. What I care about is what's your heart rate. Because if you're keeping your heart rate down, so you're going, a couple mile an hour slower when it's there, everybody's facing the same conditions, so it's all relative. And if you keep your heart rate down, you're going to run a heck of a lot better than they are. Mm-hmm. So, if you're time trialing only and, and you want to hammer through it, sure. But if you have to run, you always need to look at your race starts, especially in long course, at mile 40 of the bike is when your race really starts. It's the last 15 miles, and then it's that run is what's going to make or break your day. So don't be afraid to give up a little in the wind, because you'll gain a whole lot back once you get on the run course.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. We went a little bit over, and I apologize for that. No, but I just, I want to thank you. And just for the record, can you give us your name, title, way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, sure. So Tim Delss, last name is Delss. You can find me at either my website, which is cbmultisport.com, which is for my coaching business. You can go on the Ironman site and look me up under the Ironman coaches if need be, or you can find me at midmdtriclub.org, which is for Mid-Maryland Triathlon Club, which is our local club here that I'm president of. And if you just wanted to email me, it's coachtim@cbmultisport.com.
You are fantastic. Thank you so much for all your great tips.
Absolutely.
And this is Hillary Topper signing out from We Are Triathletes.
Thank you, guys.